Spider-Man is a film based on the Marvel Comics character of the same name. This film is the first film in the Spider-Man trilogy. The film centers on the story of a genius but shy teenager named Peter Parker. At first, Peter is an ordinary teenager who is clueless. But his life changed drastically when one day he was bitten by a step spider. It was like he was born as a new person. What is the interesting story of Spider-Man like? Let's just get into the story. Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, is a nerdy high school student in New York City. His parents are dead and he lives with Uncle Ben and Aunt May. He has a crush on his neighbor named Mary Jane, because she never looked down on him. Peter's only friend is Harry Osborn, played by James Bronco. Even though he is rich and handsome, he is also often bullied. At times, Harry was jealous of his father's love for Peter. Harry's father's name is Norman. Norman is the chief weapons contractor Oscorp. He highly valued Peter's scientific talent and almost considered Peter his own son. One Tuesday, when Peter was on a field trip to the genetics laboratory at the University of Columbia. This laboratory focuses on profits, and even created one of the new spider species. Then when Peter took a photo of Mary Jane for the school paper, one of these new spiders landed on his hand and bit him. Peter came home feeling sick, but he didn't really care and went straight to bed. During Peter's sleep, apparently the poison caused by the spider's bite began to work strange miracles on Peter. A lot of changes happened after Peter woke up. He was very surprised to find his body is very fit. In fact, he was not diligent in exercising. His slightly blurry eyes immediately recovered and he could see clearly without his glasses. Meanwhile, Stockholm visits Oscorp to see the results of their new super warrior formula. When one of Norman's top scientists, Dr. Storm, warns him that the formula is unstable. Storm also threatened to withdraw all his milk from Oscorp. Norman also felt he had to do something more. That night, Norman conducted an experiment on himself. He injects a formula that has not been approved by Dr. Storm earlier. Then instantly, he gained superhuman strength and agility. But he couldn't control himself. He kills Storm and steals two more Oscorps, namely an Escultok and Jet Glider. Then we go back to Spider-Man, who is still a newbie. He showed his own new agility by catching Mary Jane and her food tray when it slipped during lunch. Then beats Flash, Mary Jane's lover, and makes her even angrier. Everyone who witnessed this was surprised by Peter's oddity. That evening, Peter tried to chat with Mary Jane. He casually crossed the fence that separated their backyard. But not long after, Mary Juna said that she had an appointment with her lover, Flash. And from that, Peter thought he too needs a car to impress Mary Jane. But what can he do? He has no income and only lives with his uncle and aunt, who are retired. One night he accidentally reads an advertisement in a local newspaper. 3 local professional wrestlers will pay $3,000 to anyone who can last 3 minutes in the ring with their champion, Bonsa. Then Peter put on a suit and went to the arena. He lied to his uncle and aunt. He tells Uncle Ben and Aunt May that he is going to the library. Uncle Ben and Aunt May are worried about Peter's changing personality. Therefore, Uncle Ben insisted on taking him to the library. He tries to explain his worries. He advised him not to get into another fight. But Peter reacts badly. He tells Uncle Ben that he is not Peter's father and can't act like him. Uncle Ben also felt bad for his unstable nephew. Long story short, Peter didn't just survive a wrestling match. He even beat the Bonsa within 2 minutes, but the promoter paid Peter only $100. Peter did not accept and protested the promoter. But the promoter is still adamant about his stance. Peter couldn't do anything but leave. He was also ignorant when the place where the robbers arrived. But when he went out into the street, he found the robbers injuring his uncle and stealing his car. Uncle Ben also died. In grief, Peter chased the robber and beat him. Robber fell from window where his body was found by police. In the evening, a menacing figure using the stolen Oscorp's exoskeleton and riding a jet Chrysler attacks Quest Iron Space, Oscorp's main competitor. Their prototype was destroyed and Oscorp was killed. Peter, who witnessed this, suddenly remembered his uncle's advice to use his spider powers for the greater good. He then swings around New York, thwart various crimes in the middle of the city, and is known as the Amazing Spider-Man, the name he borrowed from the news anchor at a wrestling match. Long story short, Peter, Harry, and Mary Jane graduated from high school and moved to Manhattan. They pursue their own ideals and dreams. Petty and Harry decide to rent an attic apartment together. Harry is still working on the main project, continuing his father's project. Mary Jane works as a waitress and struggles to get an acting audition. Meanwhile, Pete just lost his job because he was late. Norman offers to help him find one, but Peter refuses. He couldn't help but respect Peter's desire to make his own way in the world. Peter started again as a reporter under Jansen. One day Peter saw a Jansen contest ad for good photos of Spider-Man. Then he thought of the idea of weaving the net with his camera in a comfortable place. There he can get great photos of his own heroic deeds. Even though Jansen didn't pay him the same price. But the man still agreed to buy more photos of Peter. Norman, on the other hand, is feeling victorious over the quiz. Disarez must reset after the disaster that killed Slocum. Therefore, Oscorp has more government contracts and the company's stock soars. But it was his madness that became the forerunner of the emergence of a dual personality in him. Norman became increasingly out of control, who came to be known as the Green Goblin. He then attacked the annual street performer from Oscorp and killed the board of directors. His attack also endangered Mary Jane. Of course, Spider-Man came and fought the Green Goblin. He managed to save Mary Jane when she almost fell from the top of the building's balcony. Mary Jane finds herself in love with Spider-Man. That feeling is even stronger when the Spider Hero saves him from several rapists. Mary Jane thanked him very much with a deep kiss, without him knowing that Spider-Man is a close friend of Peter. One night, the Green Goblin decided to form a partnership with Spider-Man. He attacks Google Office to lure Spider-Man into a trap. He also used his weapon to subdue him. Then gives Spider-Man a few days to think about his partnership offer. He also warns Spider-Man that the city will eventually turn against him. A few days later, on Giving Test Day, the Green Goblin wreaks havoc by setting fire to one of the city's apartment buildings to get answers from Spider-Man. But of course, Spider-Man refuses to join the Green Goblin. This causes the two to fight, and Spider-Man receives a severe wound to his arm. As for Norman and Peter, they were supposed to be at Aunt May's for a test-giving dinner. At first, they did not know each other's identity. When Peter arrived for dinner, there was fresh blood on his sleeve. Norman realizes that Peter is Spider-Man. Then his bad personality started to dominate the norm again. He left before enjoying their dinner. Hardy followed in an attempt to prevent his father from leaving. He wanted his father to meet Mary Jane in person, because it turns out he likes the girl. Harry went back inside, but apparently Mary Jane had heard all the bad words about him that Harry's father had just said. Heartbroken, Mary Jane also left dinner that night. Peter could only shake his head at the incident. One night, the Green Goblin attacked Aunt May at home. Aunt May was very surprised by the arrival of the creature that appeared suddenly and broke the window of her room. He was delirious and had to be taken to the hospital. Aunt finally received treatment for a few days until her condition recovered. One day, as close friends, Mary Jane is visiting to see Aunt May. Luckily, Aunt May is more stable. The Mary Jane shyly told her that she had a crush on Spider-Man. Hearing this, of course, Peter did not immediately admit that he was the man Mary Jane meant. Peter only admits that he is Spider-Man's unofficial photographer. While chatting, Harry suddenly entered and found Peter and Mary Jane holding hands. Long story short, the Green Goblin decided to attack Spider-Man through Mary Jane. He kidnapped the girl and then took her to a trolley car along the bridge. When Spider-Man arrives, the Green Goblin gives you the choice of saving Mary Jane or the trolley car. Then drop both of them off the bridge. Spider-Man manages to save both of them with help from a passing barge and pedestrians on the bridge. He throws the Green Goblin with rubble. This hinders his attempt to kill Spider-Man. The Green Goblin instead grabbed Spider-Man and threw him into an empty building. The two fight and the Green Goblin defeats Spider-Man. Even threw a pumpkin bomb straight into Spider-Man's face, damaging Spider-Man's face and injuring him. When the Green Goblin restrains Spider-Man and is about to kill him with double swords, he made the mistake of threatening Mary Jane. Enraged by that, Spider-Man defeated the Green Goblin with all his might, but was stopped when the Green Goblin revealed himself to be Norman. Peter is surprised that Norman is a Green Goblin. Norman then tries to give Peter an excuse that all the actions that took place stemmed from the Green Goblin's innate influence on him. When Norman talks to Peter asking for forgiveness, a Green Goblin jet appeared from behind and Norman was completely overpowered by the Green Goblin's innate influence. The Green Goblin tried to use his jet to kill Spider-Man, but he failed and died by his own weapon. When he was about to die, Norman asked Peter not to tell Harry about the Green Goblin. Spider-Man brings Norman's body back to his penthouse apartment. Harry sees them and blames Spider-Man for Norman's death. At the funeral, he thanks Peter for being such a good friend. He also vows to take revenge on Spider-Man for his father's death. After that, Peter went to visit Uncle Ben's grave. Mary Jane found him there and confessed her love for him. She kissed him gently on Peter's lips. Instead, he tells her that he can never be more than her friend. Mary Jane had a feeling that she might have kissed him before. Know the blessings and curses in life. And the movie is over. And this film has a series in parts 2 and 3. So wait for the next video to be uploaded, guys. Thank you for watching.